Welcome everybody to Man Bites Retro. This month we are doing March Beatles Madness, and these four films are the amazing stories of the Beatles and our love for them and why we should all come together, because all we need is love. Enjoy the show. In 2007, the last thing that was on everybody's mind was making a musical about the infamous Beatles and using it as a backdrop. But as soon as this film dropped in 2007, it was an instant sensation with all the Beatles fans. I remember the frenzy, I remember the mayhem, and I remember the release that came after this. This was right after the release of the number one greatest hits with their album and everything. And of course, we are talking across the universe. And we have the amazing William Phoenix joining us for this conversation.
Thank you for having me. Amazing William Phoenix.
That's right.
You do me too good, sir. You do me too good. But it's a pleasure to be here, especially with what we have on tap.
Yes.
And this entire month, what we're going to be doing. So
yes, and
definitely glad that you have me on board.
William is alluding to the fact that this is all Beatles Mania month. March Madness, Beatles style. That's what I call it, and I think we're going with that one. And this particular episode is actually going to be a two-parter. We're doing two parts. We're doing a male perspective and a female perspective on this amazing film because it has that much of an impact on the Beatle fandom, and I think that this is definitely something that would benefit from getting two different points of view. So, William, starting off, what was your favorite song from this amazing movie?
I mean, don't hold any punches or anything. Like
Never.
When it comes to asking questions, because I know I have like my favorite section of the movie, which is like the way that the songs are ordered in, which I think is amazing. But if I were to pick out one song that I absolutely love from this movie, I think I have to go with Joe Cocker's rendition of Come Together.
Yes, that was fantastic. My personal favorite, and this is just because I really connected it with it, was Let It Be. Just the gospel singing and
that was a good rendition. Absolutely.
My God. And this, now, I don't like cover movies and stuff like that. You know, when they do covers, it's usually very, they don't put enough effort into it. This film, it feels like they made some of the songs sound even better than the original, and that's saying a lot, which I know that's kind of blasphemous in a lot of senses, and a lot of people are going to be screaming at their radios, but let's be real, guys. Like, some of these songs are a lot better than their original versions.
I mean, I don't know about like a lot better. There's like they were definitely made into someone's like they made it their own.
Yeah.
I know that like, and this is going into, I guess, personal choice or personal opinion. But I know, for example, like Strawberry Field, I do not like the version from this movie.
No, I don't either.
I think that using it in a flat instead of like sharp, it was definitely taking a risk, but I don't like the way that it came out. There's absolutely nothing wrong with the song. It's just not my cup of tea. But I will forever be a fan of the last, like the ending of the movie, and starting with Hey Jude, and
Yes.
It goes, Hey Jude, Don't Let Me Down.
Which Don't Let Me Down. Oh my God, that song.
The way that she sings it, she just absolutely kills it. She just
Yeah,
It's
both of them.
pure 70s, and then All You Need Is Love, which closes out excuse me, it closes out the movie.
And then the credits
Those
with
three
Lucy in
songs,
the Sky.
and then Listen to Sky with Diamond, which I've never been a huge fan of that song, but I like what they did with it. I was definitely happy with it.
That's where I say that they did a little bit better with Lucy in the Sky. There's like 2 or 3 songs that I could say that they did substantially better than the original version. And it's not saying that taking away anything from the Beatles songs, the original compositions. It's just my personal opinion. I liked it more. I think I connected it with it more.
Yeah, and I mean, like, there's also like a huge cameo of singers and actors within the movie itself. I mean, you have Bono from U2, which sings "I Am the Walrus." I've never been a fan of that song, and even like his rendition, not a fan of it. But again, these are all opinions.
Yeah, exactly, and that's what we're talking about here. This is not by any means, it's not a scholastic approach to the film or anything. We're expressing our opinions and our consideration of the film. I think what else did you really enjoy of this movie besides the songs, obviously?
I like the storyline. I like how, because like it's one thing saying, oh, we have the Beatles, we have we have a song with all the Beatles music, but you've got to make it work, and they do. They make it work extremely well. And the way that they pay attention to the detail of the era of what was going on with the
Vietnam War,
like the Vietnam War, the politically the political field, not just in the U.S. but also in England.
Oh, that was so amazing.
Like the details that are taken care of in this movie are just incredible. I remember I saw the preview. I was at a movie theater in West Hartford, Connecticut. I do not remember the whatchamacallit. I don't remember the movie that I went to go watch, but I remember seeing this preview.
Yeah.
And I was just blown away. And it was just like, I have got to see this movie. There's no ifs, ands, or buts. And I went home. I told my mom about it. I'm like, there's a movie coming out with the Beatles. And if I'm not mistaken, it was released in limited release because it was at Sundance at first.
Yeah.
And
this was originally Sundance, yeah.
Yeah, it wasn't in the movie theater. It wasn't like a box office success.
No, it was not.
Because I remember I blinked and it was out.
Yeah.
And I'm like, wait, how is it already out of the movie theater? Like, there's no way. So, unfortunately, I never got to experience it at the movie theater. I only experienced it on home entertainment.
Yeah.
But one of the ways that I got to experience it was on my friend's surround sound system. Like, brand spanking new surround sound. Like, this guy spent like probably close to $7 to $8 grand on his home theater. And oh my God, like there's I don't even know how to describe it. Just like the music and the sound mixing. That's another thing when it comes to musical. There's some amazing musicals out there, which are great, but they're sound mixed so horribly that it just takes away from it. And this one's good. It flows. There really isn't much of like there's some slow scenes that are have to be there to build character and to.
But all of them are done in a way that it doesn't take away from the pacing of the film. They build up a scene, then they drop it. They build up, they drop the scene. And it does that throughout the film. Each of the songs kind of accentuates the build up and then the drop right after. So,
I love. No, sorry. Go ahead.
No, and like each of the scenes, they're modified according to that structure. So you have the song at the end that builds up to the next scene, and then it's a sudden drop in pacing right after, which is good because you want to breathe after those songs. And I think that's why we're able to grasp the songs a little bit better than most musicals. Most musicals kind of continue with like a breakneck pace right after the song is done, and you don't want that. You want to simmer. It's like a good wine. You want to let it breathe a little bit before you taste it. And that's kind of what the songs do for the next scene. It builds up the scene, and then it goes slowly into the next scene, which is great. And I think that changes the pacing a lot.
One of the songs that I think got improved by this movie, which I did not like at first, because I think, if I'm not mistaken, the Beatles sing it in a slower fashion, but it's actually sped up in a ballad mode. In this one is "I've Just Seen a Face."
Yes.
When he sees not Prudence, because I now got "Hey Prudence" stuck in my head. When he sees Lucy for the first time.
Yes.
And and he's like all excited, and it really describes how not just guys but like people feel when they see somebody, and like they're like did I really just see that, and you feel good, and it's uppity, and it's like it sweeps you off your feet, which I really like. But another take that I do like that they did is with Prudence, where they took the song "I Want to Hold Your Hand," which I mean, obviously it's a predominantly male to female song about a guy, which back in the day saying "I want to hold your hand" was, their version of "I want to be with you, I want to feel your skin," and it's whatever you want to call it nowadays. But they make it Prudence singing it to another girl in the distance while she's sitting on the bleachers.
Yep.
Which at first it took me a second. I was like, who is she singing that to? When I first saw the movie, I mean, I was younger, I was a little bit more naive, but I was also, and then it clicked, and I'm like, oh, like, this is a girl-on-girl relationship now that they're trying to build up. Like, okay, and it works so well, and even the lyrics, and the fact that they didn't really have to change a lot of lyrics in this movie to make it work with what was happening really, like, speaks volumes.
Yeah. The storytelling, the way that it's done in this film, it's meant to be for Beatles fans. Like, if you're not a Beatles fan, you're not going to appreciate this movie as nearly as much as one that is, because you're not going to catch the little innuendos, the little catchphrases that are played throughout the film. And a lot of the dialogue is people that they talk about in their songs, or little lines from songs, and it adds to the film's kind of backstory and just builds, and you're like, oh, that's so cute, that's awesome. It makes you feel good, warm and fuzzy inside, and I think that's kind of part of the allure of this film, is that it captures that well and doesn't take away from the story at all.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of the hard things about, the difference between writing a script and writing a script where you already have a soundtrack that you're trying to work with, is the fact that you've got to make it work.
Yeah.
For one. And let's not even mention when you're working on a on a pre-written soundtrack.
Yeah.
Because like it's easy to write, not easy, and I'm not trying to take away from anybody that's a writer out there that's like, oh, I'm glad he thinks it's easy. I'm talking in comparison wise.
Yes.
I can only imagine that, you write a script, it's already hard enough as it is. You write a script that's going to have to like incorporate songs. Now you're upping up the ante. But when you're writing a script that not only is incorporating song, you got to make the songs work because they're already made, and you've got to write around the script. And you're able to pull off what they did with this movie, congratulations. Absolutely congratulations, because you did an amazing job. Every single writer, every single person that like sat down and be like, okay, this is a song, like we need to put Strawberry Fields in there. How are we putting Strawberry Fields in here?
Yep.
And here we go. And it's, like there's certain times where like you want to sit there and you want to fast forward to like your favorite part. Like even if you watch like a Disney movie, you want to fast forward to like hey, I want to go to my favorite song. I want to go to my favorite section. I put this movie on and I put the controller down.
Yeah.
There's no, okay, maybe I Am the Walrus. Maybe. But that's really the only one where I'm just like, I really don't like the song. Other than that,
Which I never cared for that song originally anyways. That's kind of one of my least favorite. I'm like, all right, whatever. I kind of it's one of those songs that I pick and choose when I want to play it on the CDs. But damn, look at me talking about CDs. I feel like a grandpa now saying that. Jesus.
Hey, like we're talking, like we come from a generation where I'm not afraid to hide it, where I was,
Tapes.
listening to music on tapes, and I had my dual tape recorder.
Yep.
So, one of them was like a regular play, one of them had to record, and then the radio played, but you couldn't record from the radio to the tape right away. So you had to hold this big ass thing up to the radio to listen to your song, in hopes that the DJ would shut the fuck up and not decide to talk halfway into it, and then you'd have to wait till the next time they played that song and be like, oh my god. I had a version of P. Diddy and Fate's I'll Be Missing You.
Yeah.
Which I gave up on it because I gave up waiting, but like the DJ decided, like, I think he hit a button by accident, and you can hear him talk real quick, and I went, oh, you mother. But I'm like, screw it. Like I'm not even going to bother at this point anymore. But yeah, it's
this film. Like, looking at the numbers budget wise and everything, it bombed horribly. Like the budget was 70 million, and the actual gross was 29 million worldwide.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, this bombed dirty. And that's Lifetime. That's not just like opening weekend. No, that's Lifetime.
But I mean, but then it's like Rocky Horror. Obviously it's not the level of Rocky Horror, but Rocky Horror bombed. But I mean, 40-something years later, they're still doing it.
Yeah, and this is one of those films that definitely stands the test of time for Beatles maniacs and stuff like that. Because let's be real, like these songs are so good, and they like. I have so many people when I put out the ad to review these 4 Beatles albums. I got 7 people that reached out about Cross the Universe. 7 people, like immediately within 10 minutes before even William responded back. And, I was like, holy crap, guys, really? I knew this was a great film, but wow, I always grew up, like, every Saturday my parents would clean the house, and I would wake up to either really god-awful Spanish music or the Beatles. And every time I woke up to the Beatles...
There's no in between. Either god-awful Spanish music or the Beatles.
Yeah. And every time they came on, I'm like, oh my god, yes, this is so good. And I'm one of those people that every time a documentary or movie comes out about the Beatles, I'm on top of that. I'm with that within 5 seconds. Like the trailer that released about a month ago for Yesterday, that was phenomenal. As soon as both of us saw it, we talked about it on the show. Why? Because we love the Beatles and we're on that shit. Like, I'm
looking forward to that movie. I am really looking forward to that movie because I'm hoping. I mean, if anything, there's going to be a lot of Beatle music being played, even if the storyline kind of like falls flat.
Yeah.
And I mean, and I'm going to put it up against, to some degree, I'm going to put it up against Across the Universe because.
Oh, we're going to have to.
To me, Across the Universe kind of like set the bar for what a Beatle-based soundtrack movie should be.
Yeah. But not only that, like, if you haven't seen like Yellow Submarine or any of the other Beatles movies, like Help or
I don't really count those because I mean I do, but I don't. It's kind of like
those are the original makers. I mean, they made the music, so it's kind of different. But you love the music that's in them, and it's kind of like, oh wow, let's see how it stacks up against that. And I wasn't disappointed when I saw Across the Universe, and that tells you a lot, because I literally probably I could probably sing karaoke to about 70% of the catalog comfortably. And that's saying a lot, because I suck at memorizing songs, and much less singing them. So for me to feel comfortable karaokeing one song out of an artist is amazing. But 70% of their catalog, yeah, that tells you everything right there.
What's your favorite Beatles song? You knew it was coming. We cannot do this and not have this coming.
Well, you have yours, right?
I have mine for a very specific and emotional reason, but yes, I mean, bottom line is I have mine.
Okay, so what's yours first? Because
Penny Lane.
Really?
Yes. And the reason behind it, and if my mom ever hears this podcast, which I'm still trying to explain to my mother what a podcast is, so I may be safe on this one. I mean, she's just finally learning what Wicca is, because she keeps asking me, "Are you still a wizard?" Yes, Mom, I'm still a wizard. Okay, because to her, like, being pagan is being a wizard. So I'm like, that's cool. If that's how we need to do this, that's how we need to do this, and I'm totally okay with that. But one of the reasons why Penny Lane will forever be one of the best, my favorite song, is because back in, and I don't know if I talked about this on the other podcast at all, but back in '91, and I'm dating myself here, my older sister got accepted to Hanover College in Indiana. And it was the first time that me and my family came stateside. Like, the whole family was stateside. Me, my sisters, my dad, the whole 9 yards. So we went to Indiana to settle my sister in, who at the time, mind you, my sister was 16 when she got into college.
Wow.
So yeah, she was young. She was a prodigy at the time. I mean, she started college at the age of 17. I graduated high school at 16. My little sister was a freshman at Berkeley University at 16. So,
Jesus.
And we're all adopted, so we're all kind of like, just like, we had some kind of book smarts. I don't know where mine went, but I mean, they're probably in there somewhere.
Oh, shut your face.
But as we were leaving Hanover College, finally, we're talking, like, again, dating ourselves. We're talking tapes here. But as we were leaving Hanover College, I was sitting in the back seat, and it was the first time in my life that I had ever seen my mom cry. And it was, obviously a mother's leaving the daughter and everything. And Penny Lane was playing in the car. And I remember, that's like, like when you're, like, crying, but, like, you want to quiet cry because you don't want anybody else to know you're crying. I was quiet crying because I didn't know what to do. And then the song itself, like, got me and everything. And it stayed with me. And to this day, every time I hear that trumpet, every time I hear, those notes and those lyrics, I get brought back to 11-year-old me and that moment in my life, which will stay with me forever. And as much as I love other Beatles music, and other Beatles music have their own sentiment, nothing comes close to this. So this is why this is my favorite song.
It's funny that you say that story, because I think that's one of the things that I've talked with Beatles fans, and one of the things that everybody says is they have a story about listening to a song and something impactful in their life was happening while listening to the song. So that's why it became their favorite song. And it's crazy how many people have that same story, and mine's no different. Like, first of all, my favorite album of all time is Rubber Soul, by far. Is Rubber Soul.
Okay.
And the song In My Life is one of those songs that,
in my life,
oh my God,
I
like,
love you more.
I cry every time I listen to that song. Like plain and simple cry because I love
And
that song.
the use of the harpsichord in that song though
Oh my god, yes,
is
yes.
beautiful.
And it's there's a whole story behind that too because that song was when my parents were getting divorced and stuff like that. It was kind of a weird because it wasn't like an easy divorce. And I could talk about this because my mom doesn't listen to this or my dad doesn't listen to this, but they kind of went at each other.
You're like me. You're like, wait, no, I can talk about this because my parents will never listen to this. Otherwise, I'm gonna get that phone call at some point from my mom or my dad going, "Mijo, why are you gonna talk about family business like that on your radio show? You mean family's family? You gotta keep it outside the family show. You know better than that. Come on." Which that's the nice version because my parents are Italian and well, just like
Yeah,
just
yeah,
like Latino parents, Italian parents are just about the same. Except they may throw on a few extra words in there.
yeah, right. But no, like my parents were going through a divorce, and I remember hearing this song when they told me that they were getting a divorce because I was playing a Beatles CD in my room or something. And it was just one of those things that always stuck with me. And also substantially after that, I actually found out that and this is a whole basis for a documentary that I've actually been working on for years and I think I'm finally in a position to be able to do it now and it's basically a documentary about immigration and my if you talk with Cubans in particular, because obviously that's the culture that I came from, you could find so many amazing stories of these families when they're fleeing from Cuba after the revolution, in particular. And my dad told me this story, and it always stuck with me. And it he was listening to this song as well, and while he was driving away with his parents that his dad had just escaped prison as a political prisoner and he just escaped and he was driving away from Santiago, Cuba, and the city was burning because it was under siege still, and he drove away and looking at the last images of Santiago right before they went over the mountain, he was hearing this song and he never saw Santiago ever again. And from there, it was the beginning of this whole journey that he went on to Spain and then back to the United States afterwards. And it's such a crazy story hearing these old Cuban parents and stuff like that talk about how they came from Cuba, what they had to go through, what they went through as children. My dad was actually at that age where he was in the military academy. So he actually fought full on soldiers in his school as a teenager, fighting them back. And his two or three of his friends got shot in front of his face. So you hear all these stories and you're like, holy crap, my dad was 15, 16 at that time. And you're just like, what? And everything else afterwards, it's this for him, the Beatles and what do you call it? In My Life in particular, and Dos Caminos de la Fórmula Quinta. It's a Spanish band that is it's
I
basically
was about to say that's not very Beatles.
no. It's the band is called La Fórmula Quinta, and it's pretty much like a Beatles version, a Spanish version of the Beatles. And there's a song called Dos Caminos, and that song every time he hears it like he ugly cries and my dad is one of those like very machista Hispanic.
Why you crying, man? No crying, man. There's
Yeah,
no crying.
and he bawls like a little baby every time he hears those two songs and it's that type of emotional connection with these songs and these stories and these movies that we see that that is unlike any other band that we've heard because we grew up listening to this music, not only our generation but our parents as well, and even the kids that we've had in our lives, because both of us have been, have had that opportunity. And my stepdaughter, like, I raised her listening to the Beatles, man. And she loves the Beatles to this day. She loves the Beatles, and she listens to them all the time. And it's crazy how a band like that goes from generation to generation and still stays their favorite band through all these different generations. And that's the magic of the Beatles, though, man. That's the magic that they have. Something about it, man.
I mean, they definitely don't make bands like that anymore. I doubt that as good as they are as a band, 40, 50 years from now, we're not going to be sitting here doing a podcast about how great Maroon 5 is or, Fall Out Boy. And again, not taking anything away from these bands, but a lot of bands, a lot of music nowadays, which is no secret, is like if you talk to, and not just like rock bands, but like rappers, country music, bluegrass, like a lot of artists will sit there and say that they were in fact influenced by music, Beatles and Rolling Stones and Elvis, but the Beatles just seems to be always the main excuse me denominator in all this.
It's incredible. It really is how many people connect with this particular band, this group of 5 kids, and it's
did you say 5?
Sorry, 4 kids. It's the unsung hero. It's the unsung hero of the manager that I consider part of the band, because that man was amazing as well. If it wasn't
there's actually a very I forget what his name is, and I'm sorry about it, but there's a very powerful picture of this young man sitting by himself at an airport, and there's nobody around him. And the caption is like, the name of the you know what, I'm gonna go ahead and take over for 1 second. I gotta show him respect. I gotta find what his name is real quick. And so, I just wasn't like expecting to talk about it, but if we're talking Beatles, we're gonna talk about everybody that had a hand in it.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I think also one of the other things that is kind of interesting is that the Beatles not only connect with people, but they are the inspiration for a lot of music, like William said. And I think that a lot of our generation drew from that, because the Beatles, they didn't start off as like this experimental rock band. Like most people, they start off as like, these kind of experimental, they go through their experimental phase, and then they get their thing, and then they become poppy. The Beatles were the complete opposite. They started off as pop artists, and then they went experimental, which is like never been done before. That I can't think of a single band, and please tell me if I'm wrong, William, that started off as like a pop band and went insanely experimental.
Yeah, I mean, back then it was kind of like unheard of, because you tried to stick with what you knew.
Yeah, and what was selling. And I mean, even to the point where they got like ostracized by the church in so many ways, because they got some verbiage taken out of context of a conversation, and it was completely taken out of context, and people still said, "Fuck you, people! I'm still gonna listen to the Beatles."
Yeah. They tried to do something different, because I mean, when you write as many songs as they did in a short amount of time, because with as much as an extensive catalog as the Beatles have, you have to remember they weren't together for that long.
Yeah, they weren't.
They were. It's not like they were together decades and decades and decades. Kind of like the Eagles. The Eagles have put out some amazing. They have an amazing catalog.
Yeah.
But they haven't, they've been together and they've been touring and putting out new stuff, like as early as the mid-90s, when they came out with the Hell Freezes Over.
Yeah. But I mean, think about it this way also. The Beatles catalog has an insane amount of number one hits. Like each of their albums, they
Mm-hmm.
had maybe 9 or 10 songs on the album, 12 songs on a regular album. You know, besides like White Album, which was a double album. But out of that, about 8 of the songs, which is 80%, became singles. And out of that, about 6 became number one hits for more than like 4 weeks straight, which that's insane. Not Elvis, not Michael Jackson, not any of these artists that are considered like the kings and queens of freaking pop music and all that stuff have ever done that before. Ever.
So the Beatles were together for 8 years, from 1962 to 1970. In those 8 years, they had 17 number one hits. That is 2 number one hits a year on average. I don't think there's bands nowadays that can that do that.
No. None.
Like even people like Lady Gaga and Pink and Fall Out Boy and Panic at the Disco, I don't think that they have 2 number one hits in the same year. Maybe close, or maybe they do. Got to double, I would have to really look into it. But back then, this was unheard of. And they just, excuse me. God, I hate when it gets too cold and you gotta put on the heat and then you get dry throat.
But I mean,
it's the worst.
No, seriously, it is. But honestly, like the Beatles songs are incredible, and if you go onto any Billboard chart of like the top 100 songs ever made or something like that, you're guaranteed to find those 17 songs that William's talking about on there. And what other artist can you say that about, really?
Maybe Elvis.
Even then, Elvis maybe could 5 or 6 could jump to your head immediately. That's about it. And that's amazing. That nothing taking away from those artists, but the Beatles were something completely out of the ordinary. Like they were something insane. Their journey of starting off as pop to inventing punk, inventing ska music with Obla Di Obla Da, and starting whole genres in their music and bringing other genres to the mainstream, that Indian music and everything else that was there, and even playing country music.
Love, by the way, now I got it stuck in my head, but I love Obla Di Obla Da, and I had no idea it was the Beatles until like I was probably, because I used to listen to it all the time, but it was part of like a kid's tape, like mixtape that my parents had got me, and I used to listen to it all the time. And then all of a sudden, my mom's like, "Oh, I forgot what album she put it on," but she's like, "We're gonna listen to this." I'm like, "Cool." And Obla Di Obla Da starts playing. I'm like, "These are the Beatles?" Like what? Like, it's so not Beatles that it's like it's beautiful.
But you listen to it, and that's ska right there.
Mm-hmm.
And that was what 20 years before ska became a thing.
Yeah. Octopus's Garden, which fight me on this. I love that song. It's a great song. No, it's not like the best love song ever written. It's not the best song ever written, but it's a great little ballady song, and Yellow Submarine as well.
Oh yeah,
they're so like campy.
Blackbird. Oh my god.
Like Blackbird is another one, and then they dove into songs that were like completely in flats, like Michelle.
Yes. Oh my god, Michelle.
Do you want to know a secret? Like little like, and then
another one that I
everywhere.
That is, it's pretty much up there with A Day in the Life is, what do you call it? Nowhere Man. Which,
oh my god, I was literally just thinking about that. I'm like, I gotta bring up Nowhere Man now.
That song, and when they put it in Yellow Submarine, and the Nowhere Man is this basically like this know-it-all, like absolute knowledge and all that stuff. I was like, oh my god, yes, that. And
Nowhere Man, hey, listen.
That song, it just connects so much to me, and I love When I'm
And I
having a
hope,
depressing day, that I put that song on and it makes me smile every time.
and I hope that they put music like this in this upcoming Yesterday movie, because as much as it's kind of like the whole Mamma Mia and Mamma Mia, Here We Go Again, right? They had like the top catalog of ABBA, which was
Yeah.
great, and then they had to dive into the maybe lesser known songs of ABBA to make the second movie work. Well, with how popular Across the Universe has gotten, which was basically the top catalogs of the Beatles, I'm hoping that there's some kind of rendition or touch up of these lesser known songs like Nowhere Man, Yellow Submarine, Octopus's Garden.
Octopus's Garden, I would definitely say, but Yellow Submarine was one of the hits too. So that one got a lot of play and all that stuff. But I agree with you. A lot of their back catalog. Oh my god!
Oh my God, put Obladi Oblada and I'll give this movie a 10. I swear to God, I
Right,
will. It's
right.
like, yes.
But I mean, even that's why I say Rubber Soul is my favorite album, because you have Nowhere Man, you have In the Life, you have Norwegian Wood, which is a freaking phenomenal song. I love that song. There's so many like that album. I could literally listen from beginning to end, and I love it. Absolutely adore that album.
And
It's
then you're a great band when maybe like one or like two or three songs have been covered not just by amateurs but by so many other professionals as well.
Yep.
That like how many cover songs of Hey Jude,
Yeah.
of Yesterday, of The Long and Winding Road have there been? And even Mumford and Sons, and I don't know if you've heard it, and if you haven't, I highly recommend after this that you YouTube it. Mumford and Sons did a cover song of Golden Slumber.
Really?
Yes,
Ooh, I'm gonna be
they
looking
did
that
it they did it a few years ago, and I guarantee you're gonna call me and you're gonna be like, "I hate you, man," because you're gonna be crying.
up.
But it's like even like the lesser known songs, and people are like, "Oh, dude, I should totally cover this song because I want to make it my own."
Yeah.
And by the way, before I forget to touch base, the drummer was Jimmy Nicol,
Yes.
and the picture is him alone at the Melbourne airport because Ringo Starr had taken ill with tonsillitis, so he substituted him for 8 concerts and lived the superstar life for 10 days. And then he goes, but Ringo had returned and Jimmy sits alone in a Melbourne airport waiting for the plane that will take him back to obscurity. And this was taken on the 15th of June, 1964. Can you imagine rocking out with like, you're a roadie or you're like a replacement and you're rocking out and people are screaming and you're playing sold out arenas, and then 10 days later, you're like, I'm sorry, who was that?
Yeah.
Like it's like once in a lifetime dream, kind of like with Metallica when the name I can't think of the name right now, but the lead singer got burnt really bad to where he couldn't play guitar anymore, and they were gonna cancel like half the tour.
Yeah.
And this was like back in 91, 92. I think they were touring with Guns N' Roses, and one of the roadies was like, shits and giggles, I play guitar and I've mastered, like, I not mastered, but I think he said, like, I know all the songs. And the guys were like, okay,
let's do this. Yeah.
Play this. And he played, and he showed them that he literally knew the entire sets, when to play and everything else. Cool. If you look at it, you see the lead singer sitting there singing with his arm in a cast, and there's the roadie behind him just playing like he belongs there. And once that was over, who was the roadie? You know what I mean? But like the chance of a lifetime, and I don't think that I could ever. Now,
that's a forever story. That's a forever story of his, though.
Yeah. Can you imagine though? They're like, hey, so Ringo's down for like 10 days. Can you play drums for the Beatles?
Yes.
Yeah. Like,
hold my beer.
Go now? like now? Like, okay, I may have to call out of work for a few days, But can you imagine that phone
I
call?
quit.
Hey, boss. Well, no, because you have to remember you're coming back, so you can't quit. But your excuse is, I need you to take me off the schedule for the next 10 days. Why? Because I'm touring with the Beatles in Australia. Uh-huh. Yeah, sure. Whatever you say. Like, that's a new one.
Right.
But then it's like, back then you had to bring pictures and show them. Now it's like, yo, I'm going live on Facebook.
Yeah. So some of like I want to highlight this particular album in consideration because it's freaking amazing. I'm Looking Through You is on Rubber Soul as well. Girl, If You Need Someone, Wait, Michelle, the infamous one that we were both talking about. Think of Yourself, which, oh my God, I love that freaking You Won't See Me, which is another great song too. Norwegian Wood, which I love. Drive My Car, which is another, oh my God.
Oh, honey, you can drive my car.
And
it
has these like R&B twist to this album, which is just, it's really interesting, and it has such a weird mix of different type of genres in this one album, and you could tell that the Beatles were starting to experiment and starting going maybe a little bit different with their music.
Yeah, I mean, like the closer to 1970 you get, the more they, like, one of the songs had, and people are gonna fight me on this one, and I'm okay with that because it's just my opinion. But other than I am the Walrus, one of the other songs that I really don't like is Sgt. Pepper's.
I don't care for it.
It's too good. I'm glad I'm not the only one. It's too dissonant for me. It's too, like, it kind of like feels like it's all over the place. You know what I mean? It's like
it's kind of intended like that, but
it's one thing about being a different song. You go from like the rock of the Beatles to you're not going to call it the childish, but like the childlike obladi oblada. Sergeant Hart, it's like you were on something when you wrote that. You had to be.
I mean, even though like Sgt. Pepper, that song, it's whatever. It kind of floats by, and you're like, okay, whatever. Next, but and you talk about how they kind of scatterbrained a little bit on that song, but they also scatterbrained in Revolution Number 9, and I love that song because that song meanders like crazy, but it's an experience. It feels like a Pink Floyd song, and it's a Beatles. It's like, wow, that's intense. And I love that song. And that song, I remember listening to it and then listening to Pink Floyd, and I was like, wow, these guys like did this like 5 years before. It's like, damn, that's nuts, It's insane. But now, needless to say, anything else that you wanted to bring up, William, before we wrap up?
There's so much that we can talk about. It's the Beatles. Paul McCartney is the one concert, and I will say this forever. It's the one concert in my life that when he took the stage, I cried.
Yeah.
Because that is the closest I'll ever get to seeing the Beatles. But he also I went to Tampa to see him, and it was literally 5 days after he won the lawsuit against the Michael Jackson estate to win back the rights of the Beatles catalog for him, that Michael had like outbid him, and it cost him like the entire friendship with Michael Jackson and everything. But he had finally won the rights back to the Beatles, so he owned all the Beatle music, and he just went for it. Like, it was amazing. And then when I finally composed myself, I enjoyed the concert. He leaves the stage, and I'm sitting there, and I'm like, I just watched Paul McCartney. And at the time, I was like, oh, I knew he was going to come back to play Hey Jude because he had not yet played it. And you cannot be Paul McCartney and not play Hey Jude. But he comes back, and he goes right into Golden Slumber. And I lost it. I was done. I was absolutely done. I cried for the entire encore, which was like another half hour long,
Yeah.
and I didn't care. I understood on some degree those 12-year-old, 13-year-old girls that lose their shit when Justin Bieber takes the stage. Because I've always been, why would you cry seeing somebody like him? You don't cry. It's just a celebrity singing songs. No, I get it now.
Yeah.
I mean, he's. I'm not comparing him to Justin Bieber before anybody jumps on this, but I understand the feeling of emotional overwhelm to where all you can do is just ugly cry, and I
Dude,
ugly cried.
you know what I was doing during the Paul McCartney concert?
Jerking off.
I was
I
in
love how
this.
he doesn't deny it. He's like, well, no, but
I was above the stage watching him from the lighting rig.
nice.
And me and my friend, we used to do the lighting setups for what do you call it, the American Airlines Arena in Miami. And
Nice.
we watched that concert from above the stage and drinking a beer, smoking a joint, and enjoying that concert from up above. And let me tell you, it was one of the most epic concerts. And I am so disappointed that I went to the after party and met Paul McCartney afterwards.
Really?
He is such an asshole in real life. And
Oh.
I literally walked away like teary eyed. I was like, this man just burst my bubble.
What did he do? He was
I
like
he was standing up and he wasn't like sitting down. He wasn't with a group of people or anything. And I just happened to be coming out of the club because we used to do the video work, the videography work for the club. And I was standing by the door and he was standing literally like 3 people away from me. And there was nobody there. And I just go, Sir Paul McCartney, I just want to say thank you for your work. And I really appreciate everything that you've done in your life. And he just goes, who are you? And gave me like this shrug, like, and he turned away from me. I was like, I literally just walked away and I was like, fuck this, I'm done. I literally was floored. I was like, dude, I approached this man in the most professional way, in a sense where I'm not harassing him. I'm not asking for a photo. I'm not asking for an autograph, which I could have done. And, you know, it was so disappointing, dude. It was so disappointing. And I was just like, oh my God, my dreams were crushed.
Here's the thing, because I've had this conversation, and if when you talk about this off air, we can talk about it off air, because I know that, this is a two-parter and I don't want to take up too much time. But one thing that I always tell people, especially when it's a one-time deal that they've met them, is take the human factor in consideration. I've heard stories, because we both go to conventions, right? And I've heard stories. A good story is Zachary Levi, that he was just at New York Comic Con, and people told me that he was at Dragon Con, and that he was kind of a dick. Like, he was very short. He was very dismissive, kind of like you said, Paul McCartney. It's like, okay, so I kind of went in a little bit weary, also because I was getting something signed that was a little bit risque for a friend of mine. Whole story behind that, I'm not going to get into it.
Yeah.
Spoiler alert, if you ask me to get something signed for you by a celebrity and you don't give me exact like things that you want to get signed, be prepared for hilarity and embarrassment on a fun level, on a legal level, but make sure you tell me I want this signed exactly here. Cool. Don't tell me whatever you can find that's about him from this movie. All right, that's cool. That's your parameter. That's what I'm going with. But I went up there and I was like, this guy is going to shut me down. and he's going to be like, nope, I'm not signing this. I can't sign this, blah, blah, blah. I showed a handler what I wanted to get signed, and she loses her shit. Like, she's laughing her ass off. Like, he's already talking to, like, other fans before me. And then she stops. She goes, oh, I need to make sure that he's going to be okay to sign this. And I'm like, holy shit, moment of truth. Here we go. She shows it to him. He stops talking to these fans, looks right at me, and he goes, is this yours? And I went, yeah. And he just bursts out laughing. He's like, oh my God, I will absolutely sign this. And he kind of like, doesn't like cut it short with those fans, but you can see that he's like, oh, okay, thanks for coming, blah, blah, blah. And then I finally come up, and he stands up and holds up this picture for the rest of the line to see. And he goes, isn't this the funniest thing you've seen all day? And he recognized me the next 2 days too, and he was like, you're great, and blah, blah, blah. So he kind of dismissed the whole, like, he's kind of a dick. Maybe he was tired. Maybe he had a bad day. Maybe he had, if it was when he was still married to what's her name, they were going through the divorce, and he got a bad phone call from a lawyer. I'm sorry that you had a bad experience with him, and I cannot speak for Paul, obviously, or for, because me and Paul are so tight. But try to play in the human factor.
No, and I get that. I get that, and it's not going to affect the music that I appreciate of his.
Oh, no, I know, but I'm saying, like,
I'm not going to go and approach the guy again, ever.
See, and I will. And I absolutely will, because when he did the march last year for the gun control here in New York, I can actually say I marched with Paul McCartney. Yes, there were about 300 people between us because they didn't know he was behind me, but I marched with Paul McCartney. I had a couple friends that actually got to meet him that marched literally with him, and they're like, dude, he was like the nicest guy.
Yeah.
He was really nice. He was talking to people and fans and doing whatever. People were obviously respectful. They were running up to him and going, hey, can you sign this? Can you take selfies? But, they were like talking to him kind of like you did. He was like, well, thank you very much, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
So
maybe I just caught him at a bad time, but still, that story left like a kind of damper on my night. I was like...
And hopefully one day it'll be rectified,
Yeah. Yeah, we'll see.
But maybe he had a... Wait. Ready? Because I've got to get at least one every podcast. Here comes the dad joke. Maybe he had a hard day's night. It's funny and you know it. Damn it, laugh.
I am smirking, mildly smirking.
I'll take it. I'll take it tonight, and I'll take it 8 days a week.
Wow.
I need help.
Dude, you should cosplay as one of the Blue Meanies.
What is the Blue Meanies? What the hell's a Blue Meanie?
You don't know what... You've seen Yellow Submarine, right?
It's been a long time.
It's been a long time. Another pun. Jesus Christ.
Been a long... Oh, well, actually, no, that wasn't I didn't try that one. That one actually came out. All right. I got to write these down. Where's my paperback writer?
Oh, wow. On that note, let's wrap this up. Now I know what Brandon feels like when he's doing the freaking podcast. Jesus Christ.
Oh, come on. I don't want it to bug you all that much. It's just Beatle puns.
Anyways, thank you, William, for joining us and talking about Across the Universe and the Beatles in general, because let's be real, we only talked for half an hour about the movie and then went off pontificating. Yes, I said it.
No, you didn't say it. Yeah, you didn't say it at the other podcast, though. You missed it.
I said it quickly.
Okay. I guess we just didn't pick up on it then.
Yeah. So, anyways, William,
that bird has flown anyway.
Thank you for joining me.
Thank you for having me. Always a pleasure, and doubly when it's about the Beatles.
Awesome. Yes. And please, everybody, check out our website, manbitesfilm.com, and you can check out all our content. Subscribe. Please give us a rating on what you think of this podcast. I'm not going to ask you to give us a 5-star. I'm asking you for an honest rating of what you think of this podcast. And how do you think we talk, converse? join us on Facebook for our conversations. Every day we post something different. We try to keep the conversation going amongst the group and everybody. So please join us on Facebook and like, subscribe, and share us with all your friends out there. And we'll see you guys next week for another episode of Man Bites Retro.